Hello and welcome to this episode of Inside the Piranha Club. I'm Rebecca Clancy.
I'm Ben Hunt and joined with...
You've knackered it straight away. Joined with me, Mark Man Bryans.
Oh my god, why do you start laughing straight away when I do the intro, Ben? Every time.
Well, I'm just looking at his purple shirt and it's got giant buttons as well.
If you're listening to this, jump over to YouTube and you can see what M&B is wearing. He's very on brand with his purple Inside the Piranha Club top.
I thought it was blue, Ben.
Hang on a minute. He mentioned it there. Come on, Mark, tell us. Ailment of the week.
Ben can't get over the fact that I am colourblind. I believe a lot of men in the world are colourblind, although it is not true that women can't be, apparently. It's just very, very rare.
Do you know your top is purple?
Only because Fee told me.
What colour do you think it is? That's his wife, by the way.
When I bought it, I thought it was very nice, like royal blue.
It is the most purple top I've ever seen in my life. That's amazing.
Really?
Right. Okay, good. Well, everyone's on good form as we record this on the Thursday of the Chinese Grand Prix. Obviously, all the drivers have spoken today. There is a lot to get into, an awful lot to get into, unbelievably, given it's only been a few days since we've had the Australian Grand Prix. All of the teams, cars, drivers, everyone is now in Shanghai for this weekend's race. And we have our first sprint weekend as well, which means the teams only have one practice session on Friday morning before they have to jump in the car for sprint qualifying on Friday afternoon. So let's kick off on a positive with that emphatic win for Mercedes' George Russell. But he's in pretty good spirits. He's a bit dismissive of these conversations around the safety. He thinks it's actually all fine. A couple of tweets here and there will be all right. But what are we thinking of Mercedes and Russell's chances for this weekend, Ben?
Pretty good. I think that Mercedes have come in. He was made the bookies' favourite as the champion for 2026. And I think that he has looked comfortable all pre-season and he showed it as well in Melbourne. So I think there's very good chances. I'm not surprised that he's saying the new regulations are great, of course, because he's winning and in a good car. So as far as he's concerned, he would love for this to stay as it was for the rest of the season, no doubt. And it's the other teams that are causing all the noise and trying to put pressure on the FIA to change the regulations, trying to reel in that advantage. I'm not surprised that he's probably a lone voice at the moment, loving the regulation change. So, yeah, look, he needs to enjoy it and amass as many points as possible.
M&B, Kimi Antonelli, he was second in Australia. There was so much hype about him before he even came into Formula One. I would say a bit of a damp squib in his rookie season last year, but actually he's done exactly what was asked of him in Melbourne. And who tipped him? Was it you, M&B, who tipped him to win the race last weekend? And actually, he wasn't miles off.
Like last year, you're right. It was a difficult car. The end of those regulations. You're replacing Lewis Hamilton. We saw some highs. We were all in Miami where he qualified on pole for the sprint, of course. And yeah, but there were ups and downs. He went for that awful run during the European season, didn't he? Not finishing races and not scoring points and crashing out and things like that. But this is a kid who's learning the job almost, isn't he? And to now be learning that job in what looks to be the best car by some distance, you can't ask for more than that. And you'd expect Russell to almost be the de facto number one in that team, but what a year this could be for Antonelli, just to learn from Russell, to learn how to win races and compete at the top of the field consistently. And in your second year in F1, you can't really ask for much more than that, I don't think.
Okay, let's move on to Ferrari, because they are probably Mercedes' closest challenger this year. Or certainly that's what it looks like at the moment. They have brought the flip-flop Macarena 180, 225 degree, whatever you want to call this wing, that completely, thanks for the dance routine there. How do you even still remember the Macarena dance routine?
I'm younger than you.
Well, not by much, excuse me. But yeah, that is true. They have brought this rear wing that we saw very briefly in testing. There is a lot of noise about it. As mentioned, it's a sprint weekend. They're going to run it in the first and only practice session. The reason being that there are a lot of straights here, particularly that back straight. It's 1.4 kilometres long, which is where they will get a big advantage if that wing does what it does. Obviously, there's no DRS this year, and aero mode, or whatever we're calling it, is active whenever they want it to be, the front and rear wings. Lewis Hamilton is very happy, which is obviously very nice to see. He said that it had been planned for later in the year, and he's really pleased that they've managed to bring this upgrade forward. Ben, what do you make of this? What are the chances? Is it too risky in China?
No, definitely not. Not in. I know we've only got one practice session, but this could be a game changer for them, couldn't it? If it works, and I think that the actual design caught a lot of people by surprise. It obviously got a lot of media attention, and sponsors IBM must be delighted because it was on every single social media clip. I think that if it works and is proven successful, this is an item that will take months and months for other teams to develop and catch up. So I am not surprised that Ferrari have brought it to China with those straights. I fully expect them to test it on one of the cars in the practice session. And I hope it works. I think, reading between the lines with Hamilton, he was like, well, I'm glad that they bought it. I'm not sure how much advantage it gives us, which is a telltale sign to say that he fully expects it to make a big difference if we're using the Hamilton translate option. I think that it is it could be a real game changer for them, and I am delighted for them that they brought it to this race.
I'm a big fan of things like this because I think it shows what, with F1, a lot of it's about engineering and the genius minds behind that. So for me, if I was a driver, I would want to be testing this out. What do you make of it, Emma B? Do you think that Ferrari should be doing later in the year? It's only one practice session. Can they get away with it?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it might be brought forward by the fact they know they're quicker than a lot of their rivals, so you can almost take that risk, I suppose. They're not doing it as a way to catch up, other than with Mercedes. Obviously, they're faster than a lot of those other teams we've seen. I think as well. Yes, it's only one practice session, but we have to remember that in a sprint race, there's only 8 points up for grabs. There are only positions down to 8, where you score points. So I think for a lot of teams, not Ferrari obviously, but teams further down the grid, the sprint will be almost just an extended practice session. It'll be another practice session. Aston will be happy to run both their cars for the duration of the sprint. Cadillac, the same. I think it is a learning experience still for those teams that know they're not going to score 8 points. So it will be a sprint in name for maybe 4 or 5 of those teams, and for the others, it's almost FP2, isn't it?
The other thing I would add into this is if we do lose these 2 Middle Eastern races and we are forgetting the Formula One race, we are full speed into a development race. I think other teams will be using that team to max out their time in the factories to develop what they can. And obviously, any running that Ferrari do now will give them an advantage. I mentioned before that it'll take months to catch up. But if you've suddenly got a break of a month with no racing, that is huge development time for these teams. So Ferrari need to get a step. They've got the advantage of having this thing built and tested during testing. Why not run it in another session to get more data so they can be further ahead of everyone else?
And a decision on those races in Bahrain and Saudi are expected after the Chinese Grand Prix. I'm sure we'll hear pretty soon after the race weekend. Let's move on to McLaren because they certainly need some time for their development. It was pretty heartbreaking, let's be honest, to watch Oscar Piastri crash out on the way to the grid in Australia. Lando Norris not particularly happy, finishing 5th in Australia. Just to go to Piastri, it was really hard to watch. Ben, we discussed it on the last pod. You fully blamed him. And I guess after a really difficult year last year, is his head in the game? Has he got the right people around him? We know he's changed a few people, but, has he got the right people around him now?
Time will tell as to the right people around him, I think. And is his head in the game? I think it's difficult to say yes or no. I think we spoke before about how mentally tough he was just because he didn't give any emotion. The only thing I would say is that when things got tough last year, if you remember Baku around that time, it took him a long time to recover from those setbacks, and it was like error after error. So while we have the assumption that he is mentally strong and tough, just because he doesn't have that emotion, I do wonder about how adept he is at bouncing back from setbacks, because that's not been proven yet. So I think that remains an unknown, and that is a huge setback, what happened last weekend. I'm confident he will bounce back, but I just don't know how long it will take. And as I say, on previous evidence, it took him a long time to get all that out of his system. So I'm hoping that he learned from that and that he can bounce back in China. But of course, reality is we don't know until Saturday and Sunday this week.
Yeah, we very much hope he is okay. With Norris, obviously this time last year, He was in the most competitive car on the grid. He was the bookies' favourite to win the World Championship. He made very hard work of it, but did actually get the job done at the end of the year. What kind of mindset do you think Norris is in at the moment with being not at the front of the grid? He's obviously world champion. We've all spoken to him before the season started. He is absolutely on cloud nine. He said, punch me if I'm not smiling, because, if I only win it once, I've done everything I ever dreamed of. He was very happy. He didn't leave Melbourne as happy. He is still an absolute competitor, wants to be champion again. Of course he does. How hard is it for him now, having to run in a car which is probably, let's say, third, fourth best at the moment?
Yeah, it's quite unlucky, really, isn't he? When we look at the previous world champions before him, they've had a dominant car for a few years. You look at Verstappen and Hamilton, obviously the examples that spring to mind, where they've won their first championship and it's opened the door to the next and the next and the next. He's not had that because of this regulation reset. It's knocked McLaren down a few steps, and I think it's a role reversal almost, isn't it? You mentioned there Russell is the bookies' favourite at the moment. I know we're only going on the pace in Australia, but Norris is almost in that Russell role of last year, where arguably the team is the third quickest. We've put Mercedes and Ferrari above them. So would he be happy this year picking up 2 or 3 wins when others make mistakes and McLaren can nip in and take the victory? At the moment, that looks like all they can do. But he's just got to make sure that he stays strong throughout the season to do that, to pick up those positions. And I guess for him this year, the target at the moment at least has to be beating Piastri, doesn't it? It has to be beating your teammate and asserting that dominance over Piastri, if that's the only thing they can do. Because then if they do improve as the year goes on or the seasons go on, you establish yourself as the number one almost, don't you? Despite papaya rules or whatever it might be called by that time.
Royal Blue rules.
Exactly, the Royal Blue rules.
I've got a question for you both. With George Russell leading the championship and turning around and saying everyone's talking nonsense because the rules are great, will he become F1's biggest baddie this season? We've already seen it, haven't we? Netflix like to portray him as a bit of a baddie, bit of a mischief maker. What do we think? In Hollywood, it's always the Brits that play the baddies, so maybe he's leaning into that.
I think this is a really interesting question, because one thing you have to say with Russell, and you have to remember, is that he is the director of the GPDA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association. So his voice is a lot louder than some of the other voices on the grid. He has the experience. What is this, his 6th, 7th season now? He's 28. He is supposed to speak for the other drivers. So when he comes out and he says what he's saying, so looking at the race starts, for example, last weekend, the clip of Colapinto, his reactions to avoid Liam Lawson when they're travelling at hugely different speeds right on the start was terrifying. Russell is talking about how where the front half of the grid and the back half of the grid, there's about harvesting limits and all sorts of nonsense, which F1 just making it even harder to get your head around. But he's saying, look, don't worry about it. We'll sort it out. We've just got to get used to it. It's fine. He's actually saying very naughtily that, or not directly, he's inferring that Ferrari are the ones who don't want the reg changes, but actually, we, as you mentioned, Ben, Mercedes obviously don't want too much tinkering either with this advantage that they've clearly found. So I think with Russell, I think he could be portrayed as a baddie. He doesn't care about getting on with the other drivers, and you see it, don't you? If you just have to look at one track parade, the drivers' parade that they do, who's talking to who, and, we know that Verstappen and Norris are really pally, and Norris is quite pally with a few others as well. Russell's best mate is Alex Albon, Dan Williams. But they don't really seem to socialise with other drivers on the grid, which is fine. These guys are your competitors. You're not supposed to be best mates with them. And actually, I think a couple of years ago when Norris was fighting with Verstappen for the championship, okay, it wasn't the strongest fight, and Verstappen ended up winning. But you can't be mates with your biggest rival for the championship. And I think that's where Russell is now. He doesn't want to be mates with these guys. He wants to be world champion. But I think in that role as a GPDA director, I think what he is saying is so interesting, because he is the conduit, basically, between the drivers, the F1 and the FIA. So I'm really fascinated to see how this plays out. And I don't think he cares if he's the bad guy.
I love the fact you called him naughty. That's wonderful. Naughty George Russell. You're being very naughty.
Naughty. I sound like his teacher. I think I'm probably old enough to be his mother, but let's not do the maths on that. He is being a bit cheeky though, isn't he?
Yeah, he is mischievous, but he's protecting his advantage, as I said. Mark, what do you think about George? Naughty George.
Naughty George. I think it's spot on, isn't it? It's confidence. I think it's the confidence of we've got the best car, I'm the number one driver. You said about, not having friends on the grid. I think you see the start of that Drive to Survive series in particular. I think he sees Antonelli as almost like a little brother, doesn't he? Like, I'll protect him and make sure he develops, but don't think you can go past your big brother just yet. I'm going to still be the guy taking the wins and things. But you're right, it doesn't matter. And you mentioned Norris and Verstappen there, and it became a subplot to that championship run, didn't it? That actually I don't think helped Norris at all. It was detrimental to him, because there was this talk of, oh, Max is your friend, but on the track he doesn't care about that. Whereas Lando had this like almost softly nice approach to it all, which obviously he had to shed to a degree last year. And I think George is already in a position where, if the chips are down on the track, then naughty George is coming out to play, isn't he?
Oh, that's going to stick for the whole year, isn't it? You can have that one. Right, you mentioned about Max Verstappen. I want to move on to Red Bull. Max Verstappen, I think now is the Nintendo ambassador, is he? He's certainly doing all of their advertising for him. Incredible comments from him in China, reiterating what he was saying about Mario Kart. He said he no longer leaves his sim, he just plays on his Nintendo. He's really, he obviously loves this comparison, so he's really going with it. But he's obviously not happy, and a not happy Max Verstappen does mean that we get these great quotes from him like this. He's always very honest. But I think Red Bull aren't where they want to be, and I think they are further behind, and I'm not sure they have a solution. And I think a little bit with Verstappen, it feels a bit like he's deflecting from Red Bull's issues and blaming the racing that we're getting now with these new regs. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think Red Bull are lacking cutting edge. That's the thing that's missing for me. I think the nicey was something that Mark mentioned about Lando being too nice. I think Red Bull are in that camp at the moment, which is odd, because they were the villains of old. I think that there is a ruthlessness that's missing within Red Bull. I think he provides it, but that's as far as it goes. It doesn't go any higher. You've lost two strong characters in Helmut Marko and Christian Horner. You've lost obviously Adrian Newey in that design competitive element. I'm not sure the team that are left are as ruthless and hungry for success as they were, and I think
Jonathan
that
Wheatley, I would
through.
add in that mix.
Yeah, of course, Jonathan, vastly experienced and doing well at Audi, and I think that it's a change of identity, and it's almost like they've got an identity crisis, because they want to hanker after those days of old of being all conquering and taking on the manufacturers, but they're just lacking the grit and determination and, dare I say, aggression to do so, which is surprising because you've got two quite aggressive drivers. But as I say, that's kind of, for me, where it stops. And I'm not surprised that Max is a little bit upset with these new regulations. He was very vocal when he heard about it first and has continued to be vocal. I think that if I was running Red Bull and if I was in charge of F1, I'd be pretty concerned about losing my four-time world champion pretty soon, given the fact that he's advancing with his GT project. I think that this could be the biggest problem for Formula One and for Red Bull, is the fact that these regulations have come at a time when he's looking at other options. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if he says, I mean, we've said it before on this pod, but like if he decides at the end of this year, I didn't really enjoy this, but when I did my GT racing, I had so much fun. He's got so much money. It's not about money. It's about fun and family. And if he's able to do 8 GT races a year, spend more time with the family and have more fun doing the GT races, then why not do that if Formula One's not giving you that buzz?
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Because that's a very real possibility. We've known Max a long time now, and we've spoken to him endlessly, and he is the sort of person who will walk away. He has said, I think he said only a couple of days ago, I told Dietrich Mateschitz that my dream was to have my whole career at Red Bull. I still stand by that. His contract, as far as we know, expires at the end of 2028. So only a few seasons. And if he is not enjoying this job, he absolutely will walk away, won't he, MMB?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think at the moment, I think it's a bit of pinch of salt stuff, because let's be honest, put him in the Mercedes, like we said about Russell, he's not going to be complaining about the rules quite as heavily as he is at the moment, I don't think. Yes, I do think it's not just about being the best, it is about enjoying it as well, as Ben mentioned. But it is a difficult conversation also to have when Red Bull are off the pace. I mean, his performance in Australia, I don't think for a second he didn't enjoy that, going from the back of the field like he did and finishing where he did. That's a typical Max Verstappen drive that he would have enjoyed. So I know he's vocal about the rules at the moment. I think if the shoe was on the other foot and he was he was in that Mercedes, for example, which for a while we thought he might have been, then, you know, we'd have had a completely different outlook, I think. At least outwardly. He might have still disliked the rules inwardly, but I don't think he'd have been so vocal in the media talking about Mario Karts and bananas and blue shells and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay, let's move on to Aston Martin. This is all a bit dour, isn't it, in the middle of the pod? Crikey, apologies. Aston Martin have held another press conference with Honda in China, and it's not good, as you may expect. Honda have said they have no solutions to the vibrations yet. Obviously, we're only a few days after Australia, so as you said in the last pod, actually, Ben, that it probably wasn't going to happen anyway. Alonso has come out with some pretty damning comments. Again, Lance Stroll has turned around and said they're in a very fragile state. Mike Crack, the former team principal who got demoted to trackside engineering, absolutely would not be drawn on how many batteries they have. He said nothing has changed from Melbourne, which basically means they've got 2 batteries, so any crashes, one of those cars is not starting the race on Sunday. I mean, my goodness, it's unbelievable how bad it's going at Aston Martin, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I've got a question for MMB, because doing the press conference in such a way where they're hanging out Honda to dry, from a business perspective, that for me is quite disrespectful from the Japanese culture point of view, and I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we mentioned it the first time, didn't we, when they'd spoken about it, and Newey called them out in that press conference, and it's not the way things are done for certain in business generally, I think, at this stage, let alone just about the Japanese culture side of it all. This partnership's still brand new in terms of racing, let's be honest. They've working together to build this power unit for a long time to make sure it works in that car, works with Aramco fuel and with Valvoline lubricants and all those kind of things, but they've been racing once. So to already have had 2 press conferences where we go, look, we're in a bad position, but it's their fault. Don't look at us, look at them. You know, it's such a strange way of doing things, isn't it? I don't know if Honda are on board with these press conferences, whether they feel they have to attend these press conferences just to save some sort of face or to have their own say on what's going on. But it's a situation neither of them would want to be in. Honda from a business perspective especially, but Aston Martin also. You know, their road car division isn't doing great at the moment, and the two companies are separate, but it kind of, I don't know, would it put people off? Is that why we're here? I don't know. But for me, it is a very strange scenario to have already had more press conferences than races to discuss how bad that car is. We've all got eyes, we've all seen the timesheets. We know that car's not very good. We know that there are issues there. Does rolling out Honda executives every race, before every race and after every race, does that actually solve anything? Or is it Aston's way of trying to absolve themselves of any issues here? And how much longer can it go on for? You know, we've mentioned there, Ben spoke about in the last pod, there's not a quick fix for this. So do we go to Japan, for example? You know, the home race for Honda is next. Do we go, oh, by the way, guys, you're all in the grandstands, you're going to be cheering on Honda, but it's their fault that you can't cheer this car going around more than 20 laps and 4 seconds off the pace. It's a strange strategy from someone that's come up with that.
Home race for Nintendo as well, Mark.
Yes.
Could be a good marketing opportunity, couldn't it?
Listen, it's interesting what you say there about brand, because in between these 2 races, I told you a lot had happened in these 4 days. BYD, the electric car company, Chinese car company, have sort of indicated that they would like to get into Formula One. Now, I find this really fascinating. We don't know if they would be looking to buy a team, if they would be looking to come in as a 12th entrant, which is possible. They would just have to jump through the same hoops that Cadillac did to become the 11th. They are an all-electric car company. Would they not be looking at Formula E? Is it a good look for Formula One that they've got this Chinese all-electric car company looking to come in? MMB, what do you think?
I think you've got to say any company that wants to come racing in Formula One, you're going to listen to BYD, or Build Your Dreams, as it is actually known as. That's the actual full name. Look, they're the biggest seller of electric vehicles in Europe at the moment, so they're a big deal. You know, they're new to the scene. We haven't really heard much about them. They've not got any sort of motorsport pedigree, and I find it quite difficult to think they'd go from literally nowhere. They don't enter any motorsport, let alone Formula One. So to go from 0 to F1, I think would be a leap. I think it's maybe they dip their toe in the water elsewhere first, but I suppose we will see, won't we? I can't see it happening myself. I think it would be something you'd see in maybe a decade's time. But maybe that's what they're talking about. This isn't a programme where they're suddenly going to appear on the grid next year. We know how long it took that 11th team to get a place, and how long Cadillac have been working on that, and GM and all the people there, Andretti. We can keep going. That list is long and long, isn't it? So for me, yeah, it might be seen that someone at BYD thinks it would be a good idea somewhere down the line, but it's not something I think we'd be expecting an announcement in the next few weeks saying, BYD are joining Formula One in 2028.
I've googled facts on BYD. BYD have overtaken Tesla in the sale of EVs. BYD discontinued selling conventional powered cars in 2022. BYD's mission is to cool the Earth by 1 degree Celsius. And it says here, your tablet or phone is probably powered by BYD. Did you know 50% of the iPad's components even, are from BYD? There we go.
Apple will love that. We'll get Apple even more into Formula One.
Well, maybe this is what the synergy is all about.
Or this is capitalism and we're all actually connected.
Oh, this is a highbrow podcast, all of us. Let's go back to talking about naughty George Russell and Mario Kart.
Well, shall we talk about the Chinese Grand Prix? Because I'm actually, on a positive note, quite excited for it. So we saw the first 12 laps. I am. We saw the first 12 laps in Australia. It was very exciting. And then it was slightly neutralised by the VSC and Ferrari having their little strategy blunder. This is a completely different circuit, the Shanghai International Circuit. It's permanent. It is a decent hour trek outside of the city. I normally stay in the city, which is great. Go down to the Bund, have a lovely dinner, and then stand, and it is standing room only, on the metro out to the city, which is great. But this is completely different. It's a different challenge. As I mentioned already, we've got that long straight. There's some big braking zones, which are obviously going to be big in terms of harvesting and recharging energy of the batteries. I think it could be a really good challenge. And I think, we spoke about it in the last pod, but I think we should give the regulations a bit more time. And I think because this is such a different track, we are going to learn a lot about what the racing is like. So actually, yes, I am excited, Ben.
Okay, that's really good because... But yeah, am I? Yeah, I am, because I quite like a sprint race, as I've mentioned many a time. I'm less enthused for super clipping, and that being a buzzword for the weekend for your bingo cards.
You have to explain what it is now.
It's just when the engine the battery reaches its maximum, and there's no more power to be harvested, and there's some confusion as to the top speed. It's basically essentially like hitting the red line, isn't it, on a conventional petrol-powered car and not being able to benefit from any top speed because your battery's maxed out. But
not that you ever reach those speeds, obviously, Ben, on the motorway, on the M23.
Yeah, you never know. What I was going to say, I quite like the Chinese Grand Prix. Media centre's really interesting, massively high in across the track, quite a good position to look down. Catering is a bit of a disaster. Endless hot dogs. Just endless hot dogs.
You normally get a good free backpack, though.
That's true. There's usually a good swag. No, I like it. I like the fact that it's popular, isn't it? I mean, come Sunday race day, that grandstand will be absolutely chock-a-block. I went there, when it started, and there were very few people, and it was like a ghost town, and you thought, how long's this going to go on? But we're still there. We're still coming back. We've had the pandemic and we're still going back. It's a shame that we haven't got a Chinese driver on the grid this year. I mean, there is still Joe, who's linked to Cadillac, but I still think popularity would be huge. And obviously the talk of BYD is probably no coincidence. Chinese company being spoken about with the home Grand Prix. So, and I think as a series, Formula One is international and it needs to go to these markets. And one of the other aspects as well is the fans. Not as bonkers as the Japanese ones, but almost as bonkers.
Oh, I love the Japanese fans.
Fiercely loyal. Lewis Hamilton has massive support there, doesn't he? The Team LH China is huge, and he'll be carried along by their support, no doubt, this weekend.
It's interesting with the fans because pre-pandemic, it actually was starting to go off the boil a bit, wasn't it? The attendance wasn't very good. And then actually F1 did that brilliant job, and I do think they deserve credit for how quickly they got the series back up and running in 2020. Actually, when the world reopened again and the fans were allowed back in, the fans have really re-embraced that race again. So it is really busy, and it is, as I mentioned, standing room only on the metro to get out there. So I think that's really good. But I just want to ask about a sprint weekend, because we are only in the second race. we haven't had much in terms of getting to know these cars or the regulations in terms of racing. Has this sprint race come too early in the season, MMB?
Yes, definitely, but we've got quite a few, so they have to be spread out, and we know they're always logged at the back rather than at the front. So I suppose how early would be too early? Do we go now? Do we go, is Suzuka suitable for a sprint? And then you kind of get to a point where you have to go, well, we have to introduce one at some point. I think it is too early. I think second race of the new regs is too early, but it'll be a fun weekend, I think, for fans and for viewers and for journalists rather than drivers potentially. But I think this year in particular they could have been a bit more savvy with where they placed the sprint race within the calendar, just to, these teams could do with the practice sessions. I know we abhor those sessions and they're very boring, but for the teams at the moment that are still learning and getting to grips with the cars, all this new technology, those 2 hours that we're losing are key, aren't they? They'd be really good in terms of building up laps, building up knowledge, building up understanding, but they haven't got
tough.
that. They go, what?
Absolutely tough.
Yeah.
I'm not buying that. Look, a sprint race is fun, and it mixes up the grid even more. And I hope that when we have our pod and we're reviewing the race, we can talk about how great and exciting it was and how mixed up it was. I really, really like the sprint race coming this early. It also rewards the teams that have done well over the winter to develop the right package. So I'm all for it. It will all even itself out in the end. So bring it on. I'm not having any of this. We needed more time testing. They had 3 tests. Do you know what I mean? Like, get on with it, guys. If it's not good enough, then don't turn up. That's the whole attitude as far as I'm concerned.
I'm definitely in the camp of the less practice, the better. Okay, we should also mention that F1 Academy is back this weekend, first race of their season, a very exciting crop of female racers this year, and that will definitely be one to watch. Right, come on, I want your predictions. Who is going to win on Sunday, Ben?
Lewis Hamilton. With the Macarena wing, and then I'm going to predict a protest from various different teams to have the result overturned, and probably by Monday lunchtime we'll find out who actually won the race.
We should say the FIA have ruled that wing is legal.
Let's see.
M&B, who's your money on for Sunday?
Well, I'm going to stick with it until it happens, so I'm going to say Kimi Antonelli.
Oh no, this is going to be like Ben predicting Lewis Hamilton winning every race last year and then never actually doing it. The curse of the commentator.
Yeah, that's it. What about you? Who do you think?
Oh, I'm sticking with George Russell.
Oh. Not Charles Leclerc?
No, yeah.
Too far away from his wedding now. He's got nothing to celebrate.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, honeymoon period's over. I honestly, I really struggle to get over that. I can't believe you said that in the last podcast. You were critical of when he got engaged, critical when he got married, and then you said actually he's in with a chance of winning because he's just got married.
Wait till that first baby comes along.
Yeah. Oh, then you win, don't you? Then it's the new father effect, as we all know in sport very well.
Fernando Alonso will be better hoping that that's the case.
Oh, well, he might just start missing races as an excuse because he's about to become a father. Who knows? Well, we'll find out soon enough anyway. It is, of course, the Chinese Grand Prix this weekend. We will be back on Monday to review all of what Ben hopes is absolute carnage. But I'm sure it probably will be. Sprint weekends do have their way of doing that. So do join us again on Monday. In the meantime, you can contact us through our socials at Inside the Piranha Club. I've also started putting polls on our Spotify. So if that's how you get your podcast, please do vote in the polls that I put on each episode. We do really love hearing from you. So please do get in touch. But until next time, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.